present to you the podcast Wounded Hearts, Wounded Churches. We discuss a range of topics that include addictions, religious abuse, and recovery. This live platform offers meaningful questions and answers, a counseling continuum, and valuable feedback from professionals and others who have been through the process and are healed, forgiven, and reconciled. If they can achieve this, so can you. This program can be heard on iHeart, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Pandora, Apple Podcasts, and others. Make no mistake, this podcast sustains and implements three things: healing, forgiveness, and reconciliation within the Church of God. Thanks for listening.
Good day, friends. Thank you tonight for joining us for the new podcast, Wounded Hearts, Wounded Churches. We discuss a litany of different topics, religious issues, addictions of all types, and we offer a counseling continuum. And of course, we have a live open forum to discuss these different issues. Thank you tonight for joining us. We're going to have an exciting program for you tonight. Friends, I'm just happy to have worked with the staff, people that do help us out. They're here on a weekly basis. They contribute every other week per se. And of course, we have Ken Probst. He's a PK's son, pilot in Alaska, is in his 80s now. In fact, his wife passed about 8 months ago, and he's in Joplin. He's there. And we're just glad to have him part of the program. Also, Stella Cabin, been around Church of God for about 5 generations through her family. She's had 2 sons that are pastors, 1 nephew that ministers, another nephew that is a pastor. She's a mom of 8, been saved 60 plus years, and we're just glad to have her part of this system. Also, our director, Miss Tennille McLeod, she is a mom of 4. And of course, she's editor of the magazine called Arise, and she's a director. She's the one that got this thing going about 2 years ago. Happy to have her part of it. And also, my name is Moon, licensed counselor, founder, Antioch Youth Center, retired. So again, glad to have you here. But you know, friends, we discuss a litany of topics here. And because we discuss it, does not mean we support those who come to discuss these things with us. But we do like to discuss issues that have been a real difficulty for the church. We want to try to find a way to discuss these things, work these things out, if at all possible. Some things can be worked out, but if they can be, we want to do the best we can to restore those 3 things that we are striving for and we implement if possible: reconciliation, healing, forgiveness within the Church of God. So again, some of these discussions can be quite serious and quite sensitive, but we do advise listener and viewer discretion. So join the process in becoming ministers of reconciliation. You know, in this week's kind of sensitive, we're talking about grief in death and suicide, things like that. We got some questions in last week. We'll try to honor those. We've got a lot going on this session. But if you want to chime in, do it early now. People wait for the last minute if we don't get your questions in sometimes. So you can text in 1-866-538-3664. 1-866-538-3664. Our counseling line for Wounded Hearts is 478-283-9093. That counseling line for Wounded Hearts is 478-283-9093. You can also email us at reeechone@aol.com. reeechone@aol.com. So again, glad you came out to visit today to take part in this very serious discussion. And friends, you know, we're talking about suicide last week. Just to sum up briefly, every 12 minutes in America, suicide attempt. In Japan, there was 21,000 for the year actual suicides there. I've had 4 friends that attempted and 3 that who committed suicide in my lifetime, the past 25, 30 years. And so it's an issue. But if you're grieving from a loss tonight, we want to be a support system for you. I think we've all tasted grief. I know I have. A wife passed 2 years ago. Sister passed about 8 months ago. One of our staff members passed from Mississippi area about 9 months ago. So our director, her mom passed. So tonight we have a special guest to discuss these things, to talk about his journey and how God has helped him through this. We want to give John Burton a hand tonight for being here. Give him a hand. Isn't that something? Wow, he's a PK's son. You may know his sisters, Jill, wonderful harmony. I've got a tape right up. In fact, it's right here by me. How they sing. I use the tape quite often in our outside
Yes,
meetings.
he does. I'm a witness. Yes.
Oh, yeah, just beautiful, just beautiful.
Yes.
And of course, Jill was a pastor's wife for years and years and years. Outside the country she went. So we're just glad about that. John owns his own business there in California. He's a father, a husband, and he's one of not 11, not 12, 16?
14.
14, okay, 14 people. And we're just glad to have him here tonight. And friends, we're going to discuss, as some of you all know, John's son did pass about a month ago. We're going to discuss those issues. John, before we go into that, I just want to recap from last week, just one question. Walk us through again your calling about being a minister of reconciliation, if you would, please.
So thank you, Moon and your staff. I really appreciate when you have me on. It's always a blessing. When you have Brother Prince and myself, we just hit it off because we have the same type of a heart, and it's all about bringing people together. It's bringing God's people together. And when I've learned in the past that death is so permanent that it's like when you want to ask yourself, why couldn't we get something together, or why couldn't we have a discussion? Because when death comes, it's like it probably wasn't that bad. Could we have been able to settle our differences? And so because of that, my heart just started going more towards, let's fix it. Let's try to talk about it before that happens. And so reconciliation has been always a part of my heart. And I really appreciate this forum because it mirror reflects exactly what my heart has been. And so, yeah.
All right. Any questions from our listeners thus far?
Not at the moment, no, sir.
All right. Brother John, I heard about your son, and it's just a touchy situation. But I do want to ask you, what did the examiners say? What was the examiner's discussion to you about how your son, what happened to him?
Well, we have some technical issues,
Okay.
Brother Moon, so maybe we can give the audience a brief idea of what's going on.
Okay. Brother John's son did pass a month ago. I'm going to talk to him about what happened and what his focus is on that. Do you want to handle some of the questions we had last week, or do you want to discuss some of the prevention and signs of suicide?
We can. Yes, sir.
Okay. There was a question that came in last week about the signs. This is good for parents to know, to observe their children, not to get paranoid, but even for the adults to know, your spouse, etc. I think one of the first indications of possible suicide could be they begin to withdraw. They begin to isolate friends and family. I worked for the suicide prevention in Michigan some years ago as a volunteer for about 1.5 years, almost 2 years. And they trained us on these things, what to look for. We would train other people about the signs. So again, suicide can be detected by withdrawing, isolating. Like I said last week, every lifestyle has signs. The drug addiction, no money, no job, homeless, those are signs. The fireman, he got his badge, his truck, etc. So there are signs of different lifestyles. And of course, the saints, holy living, going to church, there are certain signs. So to those that are considering suicide, there are signs also too. So again, isolating from family activities. They feel they're a burden. They have a low self-esteem consistently. Also, they feel hopeless about life. Nothing's coming my way. Nothing's going on. Also, they feel trapped. They just can't get out. Just
Wow.
always under pressure. And they start giving away certain items. They might give away their cell phone, give away their shoes, or just give away things that they would usually hold, but they're just giving it away. Also, mood swings can be a sign for suicide. They're up one day, down the next. So these are just a couple of signs that we can see in suicide prevention. All right, our guest is back.
Sorry about that.
It's
So,
all right.
John, tell us again, I reiterate, what did the examiner say about your son? The examiner, the person who has 20, 30, 40 years of experience, who does that work every day. What did he say?
Well, the examiner was speaking to my sister, who is a doctor. I wasn't there, but as I began to, tell my sister about my son, she said, Jonathan, the examiner said that out of the 37 years that he's been in that business, this did not match up with a suicide.
Okay.
This looked more like an accident, a flinch, he said. He called it a flinch. And, as I know my son, I just kind of shake my head and like, what were you doing? What? And he said it was a flinch that was permanent. It was a permanent reflex that cost him his life, basically.
Okay.
And that's where we're at with it. Like I say, I wasn't there, obviously, but you have to rely on people that are in that profession to give you information that will help you put some sense to what actually happened.
I heard your son used to go on a 50-mile jog, or tell me about that.
No walk. We live in Riverside, California, and Riverside, California is in the Inland Empire, and he would walk every year on his birthday for the last probably 8 years. He'd walk from Riverside to Newport Beach. His goal was to put his feet in the sand. That was in the sand and in the ocean. The last 200-300 feet, he'd take off his boots and he'd walk across the sand, and he would put his feet in the water, and that would end his journey. And he would use that time, he said, to think and talk to God and just really use that time for him and God moments. And it was funny because he would always try to get other guys to go with him, and they would drop off like flies. I mean, they'd have their mama calling them. They'd get out there 5-10 miles in.
Calling your mama.
Yeah, they start calling their mom, "Come get me. This guy's good. This guy's nuts." So, but there was one last year. There was 2 young men that actually made it, and they said it was so exhilarating.
Did they?
Wow.
They actually made it. They went, and they had them on video. They made it to the water, and we got on video with them, you kind of yelling, "Yeah, we made it!" So my son inspired a couple guys, and they actually ended up making it. So,
Wow. Wow.
Any questions from our listeners?
We do. Mr. 313 asks, do most people plan out suicide, or do they just decide in the moment? People that are depressed.
Wow. Usually it is some planning into it. Like I said, I worked at the Suicide Prevention for about 1.5 years, almost 2 years, to my past counseling of 30 years. All the cases that I've seen, have been planned. They may not have know they were doing it, but their lifestyle. Again, I mentioned the signs that were there, giving away of their personal items, depression, isolation, mood swings, things like that. So there is usually a plan. That's why we can be passing the envelope to be on the lookout, especially for our children. I mentioned to you last week, this young guy was 12 years old, who we talked about years ago, who hung himself 12 years old, 13 years old, just a teenager,
Wow, how
preteen.
sad.
And so it was shocking to me. So therefore we can be focused on their behavior, because behaviors don't lie. Words lie, but behaviors do not lie. It is what it is. Dale Leathers wrote in this book years ago, the eyes are married to the soul. So what we see is what we get. John, tell us about your son's family. Does he have children? Did he have wives, children? What does he have?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we have 5 beautiful children. Now, that's another reason why the flinch just seemed like it made sense, because his wife was on his way. They were just talking. She says, "I'll be back. I gotta go get the kids," because they were going to go get them from school.
Okay.
And so to know that you're going to do something and your kids will come back, my son was a dad's dad. He's
Wow.
one of the guys. He was a protector of his kids.
That's right.
Wow. Wow.
He had a beautiful, beautiful daughter, Autumn. She's 12 years old. She was in ballet. She was in karate. She was a violinist. She was a singer. I mean, and then there's Troy, his oldest son, and Timothy, and then there's AJ, which stands for Anthony, Jacob, and then there's Jacob, the littlest when he was 4. So there's 4, 5, 7, 10, and 12.
Hmm.
I believe those are the ages. And yeah, he was all the neighbors would just say, "This is a guy that come out and help you with your trash." He was the only young family on this entire block of all old people. There was all people in their 70s, 80s. And when he first moved to Utah, I said, "Jonathan, do you know your neighbors?" And he said, "I don't know anybody." And I said, "See that old man down there?" I said, "Let's go introduce ourselves." And his name is Mr. Jones. And we went down, introduced ourselves to Mr. Jones. And Mr. Jones took on that family like, he said, "We don't have any kids on this neighborhood." Just to hear the kids.
Right.
And so they took that with Jonathan. Yes, sir.
You're talking to someone tonight who's going through the grief process. They've been grieving maybe for a child. I know there's 2 cases where the child passed, or maybe a wife passed, or mother. Grief. What is your advice about grief tonight?
My advice about grief is allow yourself to just grieve, however way you feel. Particularly men. Men don't like women. They seem to have a chance. They seem to be able to lean into their girlfriends, and they can cry and they can wail and they can just be very passionate about their grieving process. And men don't. And one thing through this grieving process, I have refused to be a normal man when it comes to not hiding your fear, not hiding your tears, being able to just cry because it's worth it. It brings healing. And I'm talking bawl your eyes out if you have to. I mean, really release the valve. And that's what I believe. If you lay down on the floor, if you have to, whatever it takes, you have the absolute right to literally grieve in whatever way you see fit. And no one can tell you how long to grieve. Oh man, you should be over it by now. There is no time limit on your grieving process. None. And so I would say, just let it go, let it out, and grieve the way you feel like your body and your soul needs to grieve.
How has the Lord helped you in the process of this grief period?
Well, like I was telling Janelle earlier, you either believe the Bible or you don't. You either believe what you either really take hold of your belief in Christ and believe in God, or you don't. And these are the times when the rubber meets the road. All the stuff that we sing about, all have faith in God, and all the things that we now, can you do it for yourself the way you have believed it for everybody else? And that's where I'm in. And so I've had to make a decision that said, like Job did, the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. And you have to be able to say, blessed be the name of the Lord. And I wanted to? No. Because I want to say, God, why'd you do this to me? My son was a good kid. You got all these kids out here drinking and just tearing their life up. And you got this, how does it happen to my son? But at the end of the day, it's not my son, it's God's son. And he lent him to me. And I have to be okay to let him go when God says it's time to take him. And so that's what I've done.
Tell me about your son's early upbringing. Was he like me, a renegade and a drug addict? That sounds pretty bad, doesn't it? It was what it was. It was what it was. All right, it was what it was. So was he like that, or was he a different type of ilk?
Johnathan, if you can imagine, Johnathan was a 6'5", 6'4".
Wow.
He was a Neanderthal. And when beautiful young man. I mean, my wife and I, we're interracially married. My wife is Mexican, and my son, and of course I'm black, and my sons are Blaxicans. We call them Blaxicans. And,
beautiful mix.
Wait a minute. Go back. Say that one more time. Y'all are what now? Blaxicans?
We're Blaxicans.
Right.
And, beautiful young man. I'll have to post up some pictures of our family sometime because they blend very well. But he was a very, very disciplined young man. I have 4 boys, and he was one of the ones that if you just showed him the belt, he would break down crying. He had just a soft heart. He was always willing. I didn't have to do a lot of yelling and screaming at him. I just had to say, do this, and he would do it. There was no, I think I gave him both of my older boys, I gave them their last good whipping when they were like 17 years old. And, people think that that's crazy, but they were good boys. And I told them that the reason why I'm doing that is because there are going to be productive men of society, and I won't go to jail and get them. I'm not going to go to prison and get them. I'm not doing any of that. They're going to learn how to be productive men of society right now. And that's exactly what they did. And he was one of those kids that if I just looked at him, just said, okay, and he straightened up. Not the other ones. My other boys, they were, one of them was a little bit more defiant, where I would have to really put the John Burton on him. So, but they're all good boys now. They're raising their families. They were, both of them. I got my 2 oldest boys, Johnathan and Joel, both had 5 kids apiece.
Wow.
Worked hard, landscaping businesses. They were doing it. I was proud dad. So yeah, he was a good kid, played football. He was a tight end through his, Pop Warner days and all the way up. And so, yeah, he was just a good young man, hard worker, very polite.
Friends, we've got a few minutes left. If you want to chime in, now's the time. But if you have been wounded, church issues, whatever it may be, we're here for you. We want you to know that.
That's right.
Our main focus had been, young people. And of course, next week, we're going to invite a young man. His name is Tory Flowers. He's going to come and talk to us about his experience. And he may know his father. He was a minister years ago in Church of God, Brother Flowers. And Frankie Flowers was his name. Of course, he grew up in the church, Tory, and he lives in another area now, but he's going to talk about, we're going to discuss how to get the young folks back, what he thinks the issues are, just to get that. And again, they want to bring people on. Some are saved, some are not saved. We want to be able to have open platform to reach out to those who are in need. So we'll deal with him next week, Lord willing. Tory Flowers on the program. Back, Brother John, what have you learned? What did you learn about yourself or about just grieving? What did you learn about yourself, first of all? What did you learn about you during this past couple of months?
Well, I've learned that and I don't want to sound cliche, but without God, I wouldn't be standing here, or I wouldn't be sitting here. It is the most difficult thing I've ever had to do, that I've ever gone through in my life. And I never, in my wildest dreams, thought it would happen to me. Never. Son's healthy, strong, just nothing. But what I can say is that I believe God wanted me to be more sensitive to the needs of other people as I minister, as I pastor, as I speak, and as I preach. Sometimes you can't lean into people's pain if you haven't really experienced it for
And
yourself.
that's so true. Very true.
That's true.
And so now, with the gift that God has given me with the ministry of reconciliation, when people come to me and say, well, you haven't experienced this or that, I've experienced a broken marriage and a remarriage to the same woman. So you can't tell me that God does not heal marriages.
Amen.
You can't tell me that I've lost my son, but you can't tell me that God can't heal your wounded heart and wounded soul. You can't tell me that. I'm living proof that if you take the proper steps in first seeking God and allowing yourself to lean on Him first, go ahead and be vulnerable and be that little boy again and curl up into the arms of Jesus and be okay to just be that vulnerable person again. And God will begin to, one thing He can't do anything with is pride.
True.
He can't operate with pride. So I've had to learn how to just say, God, I'm just gonna fall in your arms right now, and I'm gonna allow myself to heal as you heal me. And that's how I've been getting through it.
Any questions from our listeners?
We do. Carrie Ann asked, how would you approach someone outside family and friends if you recognize the signs of possible self-harm or suicide? Good question.
John, what do you think about that?
I take them serious. Take them very serious.
Yeah.
Don't think for 1 minute that it's not. And maybe I didn't. Maybe I didn't take my son's trouble serious enough. Sometimes those of us who are in church may turn around and say, "Oh, that boy knows better." But guess what? Maybe he doesn't. Maybe the issues are greater, and his beacon of compass and moral compass is askewed because all of the other things that are clouding. So, and I'm not a psychologist or nothing like that, but I'm just saying those things can be askewed because he's clouded. His vision is clouded by what he feels. And I think that we should take it absolutely serious. And I don't care how small you think it is, make sure that they keep talking. The more they talk, I think that's the key. If they shut up, then you really have a problem.
It's true. It's true. They've got to discuss it, talk about it. I bring a third party into it. Again, I'm retired now, but as a professional counselor, if they told me that and I didn't turn it in, I could be liable for that, because every suicide, people talking about it, considering it, it might happen. It might happen. So I would definitely bring a third party into it, a professional or someone in authority, let them know what's going on, because you don't want to have that on your conscious thinking that you could have done something.
True.
Because there is a pattern. I mean, they're not going to be out walking 25 miles or 50 miles. They're not going to be doing that. They're going to be home, locked up, quiet. They might do some bullying. Their appetites will shift and change. Sleep habits will shift and change. There'll be depression there. But again, like John said, you want to keep them discussing, keep them talking. And most of all, come to church, get connected. In fact, tonight, if you've been wounded tonight and maybe you've left, God left the church, why not come back tonight, friends? Today's the day. Now's the time
Amen.
to come back to God, go back to the church. Let him, like he said, put his arms around you
Amen.
and protect you. Because when you can't carry yourself, God can protect you. Am I right, friends? Can God carry us?
Amen. Amen.
I've learned that when I can't walk, he's there to carry me through. You might have been around the church in and out. Whatever your situation is, he's able to direct. Brother John, any comments before you go tonight?
No, I just want to tell everyone that thank you for your prayers, and he will never be forgotten. He will never, his smile. I did a tribute on Facebook to my son and to my dad and to the fathers. And one thing I can tell you is unequivocally, hug your kids. Tell them how much you love them. Tell them how much you appreciate them, even if they're doing little crazy stuff, because love covers a multitude of attitudes, sins. That love will definitely weed that out. So I want to encourage anyone that's listening to whatever you can, whenever you can, grab them, hug them, say, listen, I just want to let you know I love you. And that in itself can help deter them from getting into
true. That's true. That's true. That's true.
Amen.
I could see how that could really have an effect on your daily decision-making process. You know that dad loves you, putting his arms around you. That's a big deal.
Amen.
It's a big deal, John.
The day that my son passed away, that morning, every morning.
Tell us about that.
We're on a devotional call at 5:30.
And he was on there with you?
He called in. He said, hey, Dad, just, usually at work, if he's going through stuff, he said, I want you to pray for me. And we were just closing out the devotional. So all the men opened up their phones, and we agreed in prayer with my son. He's, just prayed God for wisdom, and he didn't tell us anything specific. He just said, just one prayer. But that wasn't abnormal, because all my kids will call me at any time. Dad, I'm getting ready to go take a test in college. Could you give me some prayer, blah, blah, blah. So it was normal for my kids to call me up randomly and just say, just pray for me. I'm going through this and that. Little did I know that was going to be the last time I talked to my son. So, that's out. And that Mother's Day weekend, I was with him for the whole weekend.
Wow. Tell us about that before we go.
We went to Utah. It was Mother's Day weekend. We had a great time. He came home. We swam, and he convinced me to get into this freezing cold swimming pool water. And he talked about, Dad, you've heard of the polar bear. It's good for your skin. It's good for he got me to get in this freezing cold water. And he laughed at me when he said, are you going to take the plunge or not? And I said, I'm going to get in, son. You're not going to punk me on this one. So I jumped into that freezing cold water, and we laughed and had a good time. And when we left, he pulled up on his motorcycle, smiling, looking good. And I said, all right, son, I'll see you Friday, because he was going to come into town Friday. And then that Tuesday or that Wednesday, he called me, said, Dad, I just need some prayer. And I said, all right, son, and prayed him. And 3-4 hours later, he's gone. So that's why it's a mystery to me, because of that, how everything played out for the day, or that from 5 days prior. I didn't see any. In fact, I grabbed him when I was in Utah. I grabbed him, and sometimes kids don't like you pops to grab them and try to hug them like a little boy. So he was kind of like, Dad, come on, man, come on. And I said, come here, let me, and I looked him right in the face and I just said, eyeball to eyeball. And I said, son, you good? He said, I'm good, Dad. And that lowered my guard. I didn't have my dukes up for fighting for. I didn't have anything. I was completely disarmed. And
before we go, we're going beyond time.
Sorry about that.
John, so maybe someone tonight is considering suicide. What would you tell them? If someone's considering suicide, what would you say to them tonight?
Give yourself one more chance. Just back off just long enough to think it through one more time. It's really permanent. And so
true.
I would say just think about it one more time. Just give yourself one more chance to think it through. And also, one thing we weren't able to talk about is the effects of the people that you leave behind. Mm-hmm. Your kids, his kids they don't have their protector anymore. They don't have. Mm-hmm. I mean, he left us. Sometimes I was a little angry with him. I said, "Nah, son, why would you do this? How are you gonna have us with 5 kids at my age?" And I mean, these are just things I'm talking out loud. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, it's like you lose. So what the decision that you make will affect so many more people than you can imagine. So really make sure you make good choices, is what I would say.
And Brother John, if they plan to commit suicide and do it, their end will not be good. It won't be a good end, will it? If they plan to suicide and plan to die, kill themselves?
No, I don't think it's a good idea to do that. Not at all. Not at all, because that's just not your life to take. It doesn't belong to you. So I would say you really need to be careful, very careful about making that decision.
All right. Any questions from our directors or comments before we go?
No, sir, not at the moment.
So again, friends, next week we'll be talking to another a young person, Tori Flowers, and we're going to discuss with him about issues and how we can reach our young people, those who have left the church or whatever, how to bring them back in. John, we're going to be praying for you and your family, man. We're burdened with you, just heaviness in our hearts for you, praying for you. We love you much. To our director, thank God for you, and those who chimed in. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Lord bless you.